yeah, I would definitely call it a jump, because this is like a whole new pond that we're playing in. In my previous role, I was at a nonprofit and was working specifically with um, like corporate partners that were making donations. As a part of that, my task was to help them come up with like a way to really sell it, right? They didn't want it to just come off as like here we are out in the world and this is just our due diligence and patting ourselves on the back, and on whatever product it's got a little like we donate 10%, something that felt inauthentic or insincere, kind of like an afterthought. It also wasn't, necessarily a good, like the way that we wanted the charity to be represented out in the world. So I would work with these brands to help them tell the story of why it made sense for them to be supporting, an organization that was helping to give access to safe water and sanitation in the world. And through that, I got exposed to a bunch of different agencies. And that was really exciting, to really get into telling a story, how to bring together even like multiple parts of, you have the brand, the business story, and then we had the nonprofit story, and trying to find a way to make those sing to a particular audience, whether it was investors or internal employees, or it was a consumer that was trying to make an impact with purchase. So anyways, that exposure was really interesting, because prior to that, I had no idea how an agency operated, what went on, it was like this black box that great stuff was coming out of, but I didn't have a full understanding of what goes on behind the scenes. And it was exposure to that like incredibly collaborative process that really made me want to come in and work for one. It's so incredible, even in the short time that I've been here, but just the ability to sit around and the conversations that you have of people approaching a problem or approaching an idea from, all different angles, and it being something that, it's not so mysterious anymore. I've seen the process behind it, and I've fallen in love with it. So far, so good.
Why do you think that is a black box? Do you think every industry is like that, or do you think marketing and advertising is more black box than others?
Yeah, I think that there is a little bit of that for every industry. I think that, there's some professions, if you're ever at like a networking event, like asking people what they do. And I actually was talking about a cousin with this lately, because she was talking about trying to explain my job to someone. She's like, well, I'm a nurse. So I go into the cocktail hour and I introduce myself and I say I'm a nurse, and everybody kind of gets it. Like they don't necessarily know all of the responsibilities or tasks or tools that are used. But there's a general sense of like understanding, because there's been a little bit more exposure. But, I think similar to that, though, there is a bunch of jargon that maybe we kind of sometimes tend to like talk to ourselves. I say we now because I have started picking up on that jargon. But, I think for agencies, though, that it is, it's a little bit more of a black box maybe than others. And I think that happens when you have any kind of creativity involved. It's so hard to even like explain a process, how someone arrives at an idea. I think if we even like went through and like, if we looked at one of our design, if we looked at Christian, we were like, okay, what are the steps that you take to arrive at this beautiful new logo that we're creating for a client? I think there is something so intangible to his work. I mean, sure, he can say, oh, well, I searched for these particular types of inspiration pieces, or I dug into this part of the company's, background, into their brand value, all of the things that you're pulling into it. But at the end of the day, you're like, okay, you could give somebody else all of those ingredients and nothing would happen with it necessarily. So there's a little bit of magic in it, I think. But in my role as an account manager, it has become explaining that process to people, and really helping them to understand the value of time and all the legwork that it takes to ultimately get to that pretty thing at the end of the tunnel.
I love hearing this perspective because there's a couple of things to it. One, I think our industry likes being a black box because the truth is that as long as magic comes out on the other end, people are going to be happy, right? But the truth is that if you look inside, it's not like this magical proprietary process like everybody likes to puff themselves up to be. It's usually a mess, right? Like usually if you look inside a marketing firm or advertising firm, it is a mess. It's a blender. And sometimes the blender puts out magic, but a lot of times it's messy. It's super messy. It's very chaotic. Oftentimes it's a jump ball. Client says they got a problem. Agency says, yeah, we'll take that problem. Oh shit, what do we do with this problem? We don't know, but we'll hit the deadline somehow. And that is most places. We are not immune to that. There's times where I think we function like that, but mostly, I mean, you hear us talk about systems and processes probably more than most places. We're a little bit crazy on that front. Not every place is like that. But yeah, we actually believe you don't have to like go crazy. You should take problems you know how to solve and follow a particular process. Yeah, if someone's really good, it's going to feel like magic happened maybe at a certain point, but it's nice to have a bit of a structure, right? So I think some of that is like we're trying to be like, oh, it's magical. You wouldn't understand it. Truth is just messy, and they're embarrassed to show it. So
yeah, well, that's true. But I think that there is a magic in that. One of the first times that I saw a strategy deck before it was presented, it was, there's the slide that you're looking at, and then there's all the stuff that is around it, all of the notes, all of the research, all the links to like references, all of the ideas from the 10 different people that have been in there, comments throughout, highlighted everywhere. And that is a kind of chaos though that I'm comfortable in. It felt so familiar. Which I really appreciate. But I think the magic though is in that race to the deadline, right? You do all of this work, and at the end of the day, it might be like 2 lines. It might be 2 words that end up on that slide. And I think that's what feels like magic, and sometimes I don't know, it feels kind of magical to me. You're standing there and you're like, you are watching people synthesize and distill and get it all the way down to an idea that I don't know. I think it's magic. I think it is kind of magic. You can put all the process in it behind it, but I don't know if you can convince me it's not.
What I love is having a structured process. Everybody knows what the process is going to be. We know what the deliverables are going to be. We don't waste our calories on that type of stuff. Mm-hmm. And what I want us to burn our calories is bring experts in the room on the really hard stuff, right? Like let's get to the point. And you're talking about the times where we do come into the room together and we've got all this mind mapping stuff going on. There's stuff in the margins, right? And you get a room of a few people with 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years experience. And yeah, the wheels that are turning and the way they're processing stuff so quickly. Yep. And working with each other in a very trustworthy way to where like really good stuff's happening. We don't care whose idea it is. We're just trying to get the idea. Like that is to me, like, man, I love that. It's so good to be in those moments. And I'm sure if you're observing, you're like, what in the world's going on? And the client just sees the end output. Right. They don't see the sweat and tears maybe that went into it. But they don't need to, right? They shouldn't have to work at it, right? They should just see like, oh, you solved the problem very clearly. Okay, great. Sure. We don't need to show you all the painful, steps along the way, all the bumps and bruises. We take care of that. I love that you're saying it's magical. I think I predict that maybe soon you will stop saying that because you'll now know too much, And now you'll see all the hairy details. And it's like going to the movies when you're a kid. You're like, you get lost in the movie. And then over time, you're like, I wonder why the director made that choice. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I forget though, I forget what that's called. Oh, I have a friend who's a big movie buff. Anyways, he always talks about it. He's like the difference between a well done film and then something that is like extraordinary is in the ability to get your brain to stop thinking like that, right? To stop overanalyzing, stop trying to look too deep into it, that your brain reverts back to that like childhood magic. It's like it takes you out of reality, and just lets you enjoy, it at face value. Anyways, I'll look that term up. I'll figure out what it is. But yeah, I think that's the difference.
The same term applies in marketing, although it brings up an ethical debate, which is sometimes good marketing makes you feel something and you want to transact, buy something, hire something, right?
Right.
Without thinking about it. It happens all the time. But that brings up an ethical dilemma, which is, shouldn't people think about things they spend money on? It's different when you go to a movie, you've already paid the money. Now it's whether you enjoy it or not, right?
That's true. That's true.
It's to have ethics in marketing is a good thing, but it also can hold you back potentially, I suppose.
Yeah, no, it can. But I think that's one of the things about Native in particular that I do appreciate is, when you look at the big world of marketing and the types of clients that, that we could have, the type of business that we could go after. I think it was in one of the first like team, all company meetings that we had where you presented the new like strategy behind how we're pursuing business, and that being done in a way that is intentional. One, because of the success that you've had, that you can be selective, but then choosing clients that are, doing work in the world that is disruptive, that it is, that it is motivated or inspired by a bigger vision of what could be in the world. And that to me is one of the reasons, why I wanted to work here. Because to me, it's almost like a sense of like responsibility that like an agency should have in realizing like the ability of like the work that we're putting out to influence human behavior and not to have real world consequences. In terms of where people are spending their money or the types of things that they're reading and the types of things that they're thinking about themselves. Or, I think that there's a million, ripple effects from anything that you put out into the world. So I think that us pursuing business specifically to, target those clients that are almost inspiring us, that we can feel good about what it is that we're doing together.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I think everybody wants to do work that's meaningful, that has positive societal impact. Like everybody wants to do that, right? Almost everybody does. But then things compromise that. Money very quickly compromises that, right? And so, yeah, well, you're right. We've gotten to a point now where success is basically just being a little bit more selective about what you do, right? And so you should be able to become pickier and pickier versus just, give me everything, right? So yeah, we've worked really hard to get to that point where we can be a little bit more selective. Not every business we're going to work with is going to be Mother Teresa, but first of all, do no harm, right? That's a good line to set. And we have really strong people here. They're not going to work at a place where they don't feel good about the work they're putting out. So our talent's far more important than just about anything else. So besides, you want to wake up in the morning and look in the mirror and be able to do that, right? You want to be able to look in the mirror in the morning, be like, yeah, what I'm about to spend the rest of my day on is worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I don't know that it was necessarily a fear. That might be too strong of a word, but in leaving the nonprofit world and coming to an agency that, that like was a thought that I had where I was like, is it is it motivating enough for the day not to be completely 100% focused on something that is altruistic? But, to your point, I think that we do feel good about the work that we're doing with our clients, and that there is so much thought and intention that is baked into that. That it is something that it feels good it feels like a good way to spend your day, to spend your time. I mean, that's the most precious thing that, we have. And I'm so excited to be spending it like this.
Yeah, we love our nonprofit clients, but I also think that there's a lot of good that can be done in the world through business, right? I mean, if a business conducts itself a little bit more ethically, and what we touch is their marketing or their brand, then I think that's a positive thing. And so it can go one of two ways. And why don't we do it in a way where maybe it's a little bit more ethical, it serves society in some way? I mean, that's the intention, right? Now, does it show up every single day? Probably not, but we all agree that's what we want to do, right? So we're always looking for opportunities. We're trying to pick, who we introduce ourselves to, that type of thing. So it's going to be a long road, and I don't predict that every relationship has that opportunity. One out of three would probably be pretty good, but I still think you can make a dent doing it that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are some of these surprises of joining Native that maybe you didn't expect coming in?
The surprises. Well, I don't know. I feel like part of me, I haven't been able to stop thinking about live Friday toots last week. The Slack post every week of people just being, I don't know, so open about their gratitude for the work of everyone else, that's in this building. It like took me by surprise. I think, I've always worked in environments where people were supportive, and, it was a collaborative environment, and there was a general respect, for the people that you were with. But I don't think it was something that we ever articulated regularly or very well, even when we did, have opportunities to do it. And it was more formal, and I don't know. So it was so heartwarming to see that it is, it's not something that is expected, every week, but man, you just see the flood come in of people just taking the time to tell others how much they value and appreciate, the work that happened in the week. What a way to go out on a good week, on a bad week, when you've hit some stumbling blocks, when you're maybe questioning your own performance, or, thought, oh, okay, we could have done it a little better here. It's just that it is a very cool, I don't know. It's a very cool, cultural thing that I don't think I was expecting.
So somebody's going to be watching this and wonder what the heck we're talking about. I'll give the background. So last Friday we went out, we gathered around the kitchen, big giant kitchen table we've got, and about half the company was there. We had some champagne. We were making toast because we had some things that we were excited about. And then we just started this kind of organic live, what we call toots, live toots, where we're basically throwing out compliments. Yeah. The toots thing is
tooting the horn.
Yeah, you're tooting the horn, but the toots thing is inside. That's an inside joke, inside thing for our team. That started 5 years ago. So what happened was 5 years, maybe 6 years ago, there was something really challenging that had happened that week. And I remember somebody was sitting on a couch, and I think Shelby just stopped what she was doing, and she just started giving compliments to somebody who was having a hard week because hard situation or something like that. And we had a new person, and he's like, "Are you guys kidding me? When you guys are stressed out, you give each other compliments. The last place I was at, we yelled at each other." He's like, "You guys compliment each other. You guys are crazy." And so then that moved over to Slack, and it became a Friday thing. And then shout outs became toots, became trumpet emojis. So that's what it is. It's always been organic, which I love. If it was forced, it would not mean anything, but it's always been pretty organic.
Yeah, it's really awesome. And even if you're not the one called out, like it's just it's such a thing to observe too. It also gives you like a little insight to who might be having some challenges or who, is having a big success. Yeah, and it's just motivating all around. So yeah.
It's always been a Slack thing. And honestly, it hasn't been in person since that incident I just told you 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So in person was awesome. I think we're all
In
like,
person
yes,
was great. That was one of the most wholesome like, experiences I've had in a long time.
We had a couple of people walk up late and they're like, what are we walking into?
It was awesome. It was such a feel good moment. Also, and I think it struck me this morning too, in our all company meeting, doing the weekly question and having people answer. I enjoy hearing the people here talk. Everyone has such an interesting, point of view, the sense of humor that is, I don't know. It's like you kind of have a collection of people that maybe are like the bright bulbs of like all their friends, like in their respective groups, like they might be like the shiniest one, but then you put them all in a room together and it's like we go around the room and everyone's telling a story or a joke and there is no like lack of flavor coming from any voice in the room, and I think that's really cool. I feel like I could hang out and talk with people forever, which is a good thing.
Which is the point. We started that as like a fun thing to do one morning. And I realized that this is a really easy shortcut for us to get to know each other and build trust. And I care a lot about teamwork. I want to make sure that it's not like, if it's like, hey, you could have a bunch of individuals working their tail off or everybody kind of working together, it's like easy, it's teamwork, right? So when you get to know people like that, you build trust because those two weird stories about Thanksgiving, one year, or that your mother-in-law has this weird, quirk or whatever. And so it's real easy to get to know each other and trust and not have like this weird sort of professional like distance between you and someone else. Like we're not trying to create a family. We're not trying to do that at all. We're trying to create a team that trusts each other. I think that's one way to do it.
Yeah. And you can even see that translate into like client interactions, the level of conversations, even if it is, just in those awkward moments when we're waiting for everyone to get on the call, that it is, that type of conversation. And that I think gets you to a better working relationship when you are approaching it almost with like a bit of vulnerability and sharing about yourself, and being curious and interested in wanting to get to know other people. So yeah, that bit of the culture that has been nurtured within Native. You can see the implications of that, as we work with clients.
How do you think, if you put yourself in the shoes of some of your clients that you're working with, how do you think they perceive our team, maybe in comparison to other firms that they've worked with in the past? What do you think their perception is?
Yeah, well, I have gotten some real-time feedback on that. But I think that they have been impressed with, one, the quality of work that's been delivered in the time that it's been delivered, I think is always impressive. But I think more than anything that they have been struck by the level of collaboration, the willingness to support like tangential work that might be influenced by some like foundational brand pieces that we're doing. And them using us as a resource and us being willing to be that resource just to even like bounce ideas off of, for an example, the current client that they were separately doing mission, like work on their mission and their values. And that's something that they have looped us into, because they know how well that we know the company, right? That anyone on our team could, I mean, not saying that we are like complete experts, but the ability to master like all of the information, take it in and like really understand who they are, makes us a really awesome resource for, you know, a lot of other work that they're doing. So I think you see that, you know, even in the way that we started communicating with them. You know, I have like a Slack channel with them, so it is constant communication. And it is that there is like a sense of trust and respect, and you know, knowing that if we're like all in this together, that we're going to end up with a, you know, an incredible output. So yeah, I would say collaboration. I think that's one of our greatest assets, is our willingness to jump in with our clients.